This is a big challenge, and the radicals would like to think that they have been able to put freedom under siege. But I think firstly, the world has gone through similar challenges in the past. And secondly, I think it's important and useful to probably realize that the violence of today from the Islamic radicals is perhaps an outcome of a long series of intolerance that had prevailed in many parts of the world. And therefore, we should look at it probably in a bigger context, particularly in view of a liberal response, that we as liberals must be willing and able to stand up to all forms of intolerance, lest it manifests into violence at some point. And therefore, it's not a coincidence perhaps that that in countries where freedom of expression is under threat, violence tends to follow, or intolerance tends to grow, and it manifests increasingly in various violent forms of behavior. And that has been noticed by many in India today, that there is a sense of intolerance, not because people disagree, but because the disagreement is taken to a pretty illogical end, in my view, which is threat of violence or actual perpetration of violent acts. Because in plural democratic societies, freedom of expression should be absolute, and which would include the right to dissent, right to differ, right to disagree, and one should be willing and able to accept even obnoxious speech, because the principle is much more sacrosanct in my view. And once we begin to curtail freedom of expression on the ground that it's affecting somebody else's religious, cultural, or other sentiments, we are on a very shaky ground. And that if we continue on that path, then not only freedom will disappear, freedom of expression and other forms will be under threat, but physical violence would be a logical outcome. I think this is an area the liberals really have to realize, that freedom to express include freedom to offend. And if anyone is offended, they can respond by more free speech rather than trying to restrict free speech or curtail that freedom. And because I think the relationship is very critical. The Islamic countries in the Middle East have a very poor reputation on freedom of expression. Therefore, it's not a coincidence that they are experiencing the most violent form of extremism that the world has seen for a long time.